is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, I had some questions coming through the question box. Hopefully your audio is now working. My apologies if it's not. I'm going to kind of start from the top, so hopefully you can all hear me now. Let's make sure that that's the case. We're good to go now. Excellent. So hello everyone and welcome to another webinar brought to you by the Motor Safety Association. My name is Nathan Kostrin. I will be your presenter today, and we're going to be talking about near-miss reporting. I personally always found this to be a very interesting topic. I feel it's kind of one of those things that an organization either does very well or they possibly have issues with the reporting process and encouraging people and getting people to actually report. So we're going to try and delve a little deeper in that today. Hopefully most of you will come out with some information that can reinforce or support your existing program, or if you're creating a near-miss reporting program, that hopefully we can, like I said, add some value to that and help you get off to the right foot in that direction. So you may have noticed just some housekeeping stuff. You may have noticed that your microphones have been muted. They're going to remain muted for the duration of the webinar. However, if you have any questions as we move through the webinar, please feel free to enter them into the question box. And at the conclusion of the webinar, I'll print off all the questions, I'll provide answers to them, and send the responses to the participants attending live today. Excuse me. So a little agenda summary for what we're going to cover off today. We're going to be discussing, we're going to kind of do a quick intro, discuss what near misses are, what are some of the causes of near misses. We're going to go into reporting, kind of what are the benefits of reporting near misses, as well as kind of a breakdown of what that process should look like. Obviously, anytime we have something reported in terms of incidents, accidents, near misses, concerns, we also should follow up or investigate them. So we'll talk about the investigation process, how that should look and play out. And then we're going to kind of cap it all off with discussing some improvements. What are some things that we would recommend, or I'd recommend, that would hopefully help you folks in terms of improving near-miss reporting at your business, and we will summarize everything at the very end. So, without further ado, introduction. What is a near miss? Well, a near miss is an unplanned event that did not result in an injury or damage, but had the potential to do so under slightly different circumstances. So again, we didn't have an injury or damage, but we did have an incident where we could have potentially had an injury or damage had things been a little bit different. We've heard near misses referred to or seen them on investigation reports. We've seen different terms used, like close call, narrow escape. I've seen good catch. And I just want to touch on the last one, good catch. A company that I was auditing a little while back, they had what was called a good catch program. And this encouraged people to report near misses, any concerns or hazards they've identified. And I really liked that idea. I like the positive connotation behind good catch as opposed to saying near miss. Near miss would maybe imply something more negative. And obviously, when we've had a near miss situation, something not positive has happened, or something potentially negative has happened. So I like the idea of kind of reinforcing that with a positive connotation towards the reporting side by saying good catch. Again, this company, they actually saw a significant increase when they changed the program over to a good catch program. And so I would, not to say that that's something that you must do, but I did like the idea of it, and I found it very interesting that they saw all of a sudden a large increase in terms of people reporting once they changed the program, just the name of it. And I think they also simplified the procedure for reporting good catches or near misses. So just kind of a thought or something to kind of get the wheels spinning a little bit on how that can possibly be perceived as more of a positive outlook on it by your workforce. So near miss versus dangerous occurrence. What's the difference between the two? Well, number one, reporting near misses, there is no health and safety legislated requirement or legal requirement to report near misses. However, if they meet the criteria of a dangerous occurrence, they must be reported to the Ministry of Labor Relations and Workplace Safety here in Saskatchewan. So you need to determine what is a dangerous occurrence. A dangerous occurrence would be similar to a near miss in the sense that it's something that could have happened but didn't happen. However, the thing that is what you need to distinguish is what is the criteria. So a dangerous occurrence is an incident that could have resulted in the death of a worker or the worker being admitted to a hospital as an inpatient for 72 hours or more. So depending on the information that's given to us, the information at our disposal, we're going to have to take a look at the facts of that information and determine, was this a situation that could have resulted in a fatality or somebody going to the hospital for potentially 72 hours or more as an inpatient. So again, when we look at near misses, dangerous occurrences, and we're going to have an investigation team look into these things further, that might be a discussion for that team to have based on the facts. So it's always good to get other people's perspectives on the situation so you can hopefully come out with the best outcomes. But again, a near miss and dangerous occurrence, they are one and the same in the sense that something happened, but we didn't have a injury, we didn't have any damage. However, the dangerous occurrence could have resulted in fatality or somebody being admitted to the hospital for 72 hours or greater as an inpatient. So here's some examples of how these things might differ. So a worker slipping on the ice in a parking lot and they nearly fall. In most cases, this is going to be a near miss. However, again, we want to understand what are the details of it. Did the person fall straight back and almost hit their head on the concrete? Again, depending on the circumstances, we may even say that's a dangerous occurrence. But in most cases, when somebody slips on ice, chances are they're going to fall on their side. We see sometimes hip injuries, arm injuries, scrapes, cuts, bruises, sometimes fractures. In most cases, this is going to be a near miss scenario. However, if we have some slightly different particulars as part of this incident, for example, the second example, worker slips on the ice in the parking lot, nearly falls on a piece of exposed rebar. Well, all of a sudden now we have a near miss dangerous occurrence. This is now a dangerous occurrence because if they would have potentially fallen on this rebar, the rebar could have impaled them, could have caused serious injury, could have caused possibly a fatality. So this is now a dangerous occurrence. So again, the facts of the matter are going to tell us if this is a near miss or if this is a dangerous occurrence. Another example, the worker nearly cutting themselves with a box cutter. Most cases, it's going to end up being a cut. Maybe it isn't even a cut. It was just kind of a close call where they almost cut themselves. Usually it's going to be a cut. Maybe they end up needing stitches. That'll usually be a near miss in most scenarios. However, a worker is nearly hit by a vehicle backing out of a service garage. Well, that's now a near miss dangerous occurrence because obviously a vehicle being involved, that could potentially cause serious injury, possibly even a fatality. So again, you're going to have to weigh the details of the matter to determine ultimately, is this a dangerous occurrence or is this just a near miss situation? Some of the likely causes or commonly identified causes when we're looking at near misses are unsafe conditions. This is things like defective tools and equipment, poor housekeeping practices, inadequate guarding on tools. These are conditions, you can even see actually the electrical cord here being frayed in the picture to the right. These would be considered unsafe conditions. There's also unsafe actions. So possibly a worker cutting a corner or taking a shortcut to get a job done quicker. They're not following their safe work practice or procedure. Using the equipment improperly or using a piece of equipment that isn't supposed to be used for a certain job. Operating equipment without training, these would be all considered unsafe actions potentially. There's also human factors involved. So people are sometimes distracted when they're doing things. They're in a hurry, possibly they're fatigued. They have inadequate training and experience. All these things could be human factors that could lead to a near miss. There's also job factors. Maybe there's no safety management system in place at the business. There's maybe no safe work procedures or practices developed, or readily available for a worker to use. Inadequate supervision, no training, no ongoing maintenance or inspections at the facility. All of these could be considered job factors that could lead to a near miss situation. And also lack of communication, lack of safety awareness and training. These could probably go under one of the other or one of the headings that we had seen on the slide before. Just to the right of that, actually, you see a safety information. It says it's a safety board. MSA, we've actually developed these safety posters to hand out to our members so that they can post information on those boards. You can see there's an area you can put your safety policy, as well as your health committee meeting minutes and any inspection results, other safety related information, the workers' rights and responsibilities. So we've got a lot of information that we can actually put on these boards. It's not limited to the things that you see on here. You can put, again, coming back to the near misses, we could have our near miss reporting procedure, as well as maybe our near miss reporting forms put on this bulletin board. It's a way of communicating with your staff and making them more aware of your safety program. So we encourage having these safety bulletin boards. It is required that you provide your employees and workers with information. So this is a great tool to use that. And if any of you folks would like one, definitely reach out to us and we can drop one off at your business. And I'll provide the information to get a hold of us at the end of the webinar today so that you can do so. So getting to the near miss reporting aspect. So let's talk about, first of all, the benefits of near miss reporting. Number one, it's a proactive approach to having an injury or actual damage or an actual injury taking place at your business. We often don't, or one thing I should say that we need to engage more often in is the proactive preventative activities, inspecting on an ongoing basis, encouraging near miss reporting. These are proactive activities. This is trying to prevent things from happening before they happen. So near miss reporting is, again, one of those tools that probably doesn't get enough emphasis in terms of our prevention efforts. We really want to encourage near miss reporting because it allows us to get out in front of things. Because if it almost happened to you at your business or someone at your business, the chances that it could happen to somebody else are pretty good. So again, this is a proactive approach to safety. Measurement, it's a safety leading indicator. And what is a leading indicator exactly? Well, it's a proactive and preventative measure that kind of can shed some light about the effectiveness of safety and health activities, and also reveal problems within our health and safety programs. Typically, safety leading indicators are geared towards measuring the volume of safety activities at our business. How many, how often? Example would be, how many toolbox talks do we have throughout the year? How often are we holding them? How much training are we doing at the business? How often are we doing that training? How often are we inspecting at our business? How many near misses have been reported throughout the year? These are all leading indicators that give us a bit of an inclination on where we should gear our efforts towards safety. The opposite of that would be a lagging indicator, and you should measure both. Essentially, a good program will use leading indicators to drive change and lagging indicators to measure the effectiveness. So a lagging indicator would be, we've had 5 time loss injuries this year. We had 100 missed or time loss days as a result of those injuries. Those would be lagging indicators. So something's happened already, and these are the numbers or lagging indicators directly related to those situations. So again, the leading indicators can ultimately, we use the lagging indicators to measure effectiveness, the leading indicators to drive the change within the business. So if we have a number of time loss injuries, we want to look at some leading indicators, possibly an increased amount of inspections, possibly increasing the amount of toolbox talks or safety meetings that we're holding. So again, one can influence the other. We should measure both. Near miss reporting, it encourages employee participation and it reinforces the workplace responsibility system. And ultimately, That is what the workplace responsibility system is all about. It's participation, it's consultation within the entirety of the business, from the owner to the managers, supervisors, and workers. It's encouraging everybody to have a say and have input in how health and safety is done at our business. The more we encourage that, the more participation that we have amongst all the members, we are going to be so much more effective in terms of preventing health and safety issues and injuries and damage at our business because of it. But we do need everybody rowing that boat in the same direction. And near miss reporting, if we do it well and we put a positive spin on it, it's going to increase that participation element. And again, it's going to increase our effectiveness when it comes to health and safety. Some of the challenges that we often hear with near miss reporting, it takes time away from getting other work done. That's to some degree understandable. However, you tell me what takes more time. Taking a few minutes to fill out a near miss report and submitting it, and somebody doing a follow up to it, or us having an injury because of that near miss that turns into an injury or damage. And now we need to, we've got to fill out paperwork for WCB. We have to fill out the investigation paperwork. We might be doing witness statements because of the extent of the injury. Possibly that worker is now going to be away from work for a period of time. Now we have to retrain somebody, or train, I shouldn't say retrain. We might have to retrain that worker when they come back. We have to train somebody to replace them. We have less supervision on the floor because the supervisor needs to spend more time in that area, as well as conducting the investigation. So you can see how the incident that happens, when we actually have an incident happen, how that takes away a significant more amount of resources and time than if we proactively are doing near miss reports and dealing with things before they become incidents. That is the key, is prevention, right? Because it takes a lot more time when we have injuries happen, and we have to put a lot more resources forward when we have injuries happen at our business. There's also the fear of disciplinary action, which is understandable. Sometimes, depending on what the culture is like at our business, depending on how we're promoting near miss reporting, people might have a fear that their supervisor or management team may come after them as a result of reporting. So we want to discourage the negative aspects of it, and we want to encourage, we want to put a positive spin on near miss reporting, not focusing on blaming people, but focusing on the outcomes, focusing on improving health and safety. There's a fear of being chastised by other employees as well for reporting things like near misses and concerns. There's the embarrassment of, sometimes people are embarrassed that they're the person that, had the near miss. They're the person that almost fell, and they don't want to make a big deal about the situation or draw further attention to them. Those are situations where we often see these are the challenges that come up with near miss reporting. And again, I think if we put a more positive approach and spin on these things, and we encourage it, and we encourage the positive outcomes that come as a result of reporting these things, we're just going to have better outcomes, and we're going to have more people willing to report things when they do happen. And finally, nothing's done after incidents are reported. And I've heard this come up before as well. We've had situations where, I've asked a worker, how come they bring up a concern to you when you're out doing an inspection or an audit, and have you talked to your supervisor? Well, I do, but they never ever do anything about it. That's the worst case scenario, because that becomes a cultural issue. And it also means that if I'm reporting something and nothing's being done about it, chances that I'm going to continue to report are going to be pretty slim. So we want to make sure that we have good follow-up processes in place as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that momentarily. So the consequences of not reporting near misses might be obvious, right? And some less obvious. The top one there, missed opportunities. when we report something that was a near miss, we have an opportunity to correct it. But if nobody's bringing forward information or reporting concerns and near misses, we miss an opportunity to do something about it. And then all of a sudden it results in an actual injury or damage, right? That's the consequence of not reporting. We miss the opportunity to do something about it. Then all of a sudden it happens again or to somebody else. And now we've had an actual injury or damage. The consequence of that is obviously our employees who sustain the injury, the suffering that they have to go through from a health standpoint. Depending on the nature of the scenario, it can be quite serious. And people can suffer for a long period of time depending on the outcomes of those injuries, and they have to live with that for months, weeks, or possibly the rest of their life. So that's something that we need to also consider. There's a moral aspect to this. Then there's the financial aspect, higher insurance premiums. And this isn't just with WCB. Maybe you've had the injury, it results in a time loss situation. Well, obviously, the more costs that accrue for medical costs, compensation costs for that worker being away, that is going to make the insurance premium go up for WCB. Also, when we talk about businesses, we're going to look at commercial general liability insurance when there's damage or injury to a third party, possibly a contractor on site or a customer. All of a sudden, those insurance premiums are going to go up as well. So there's a moral, a legal, as well as a financial aspect to all of this. And they're all consequences of not reporting. Poor reputation, especially if it's something that ends up in the paper, it's not going to look good on your business. And also, we know that people tend to work within the same industries that hop around to businesses. If you have a technician or somebody that has more specialized work, they're typically going to work within the same industry. And if they switch employers, they might say, hey, yeah, they've got a terrible program there. Everything was unsafe, a lot of old equipment. Managers never really did anything about concerns that we would report. That word gets around, and poor reputation. It's really hard to shake that once you have one. So again, these are all consequences of not potentially reporting near miss situations. So it's very important at the outset of this that we've established a near miss reporting system. And this really, the most important factor involved in all of this is our leadership. Our leadership must establish a reporting culture. Our leadership needs to guide these safety activities, and they have to be at the forefront of it, from the owners, managers, supervisors to the workers, and all the way back up. But the employer ultimately needs to, and the management and leadership team need to encourage employees to report near misses. And it's going to show that they're actually serious about preventing incidents. It's going to improve their safety culture, and it proves that the company actually welcomes input rather than punishing workers who admit that they've made a mistake or that something has happened, right? So it's up to the leadership team to really drive that culture from the top down. Policies and procedures, make them easy to understand and very simple to execute. Again, we've got no sort of health and safety requirement to report near misses, so you can create your own near miss reporting forms. Often companies will have a reporting form that you can check off the box. Was it a near miss? Was it an injury or a medical incident, first aid incident, so on and so forth, damage to the property? So you can create your own form if you would like to, and maybe it's just specific to near misses. Your form should contain the nature of the incident and the details of what happened. Make sure that you record potential outcomes of the incident, and also provide employees with a chance to, add photographs or videos, make suggestions for how they would remedy that situation. Should have date, time, and location of the near miss, and so on and so forth. I'm going to provide you folks with some templates that you can look at and mold them to your business. If you're interested in that, I will send that out at the conclusion of the webinar today. But the biggest thing, guys, is make sure that the reporting system has clear steps. So this is our reporting form. This is how you submit that information and to who. And this is what the follow-up will look like, right? And we'll talk about the investigation portion momentarily. But again, this is the form. Make sure that it's detailed, and when you fill it out, this is who you submit it to, and this is how the follow-up will look like once you submit that form. So make it easy to understand and very simple for your team to execute. Should be non-punitive and anonymous, right? Our goal is to focus on the lessons as opposed to placing blame. And I had mentioned that earlier. We want to get away from placing blame. We want to focus on the lessons learned so that we can get better, so that the person who reported it can get better. That's really where we want this focus to be. It's a learning opportunity, not an opportunity to place blame. And we need to have that positive spin on it. We need to have that positive mentality around it, or else, again, we're going to be discouraging people to report. And ultimately, we need to follow up or investigate to identify the root causes. And we're going to talk about root cause and exactly what that is as well in the investigation portion. But we need to make sure that we're following up on these activities, because if we don't follow up when something's been reported, again, that is going to discourage reporting in the long term. And that's obviously something that we're trying to mitigate. So anonymity, guys, very important part of this process as well. Make sure that people, again, can remain anonymous. If you allow people to do that, they might feel more comfortable with reporting as well. Just jumping back to the last piece there. Make sure that they have the option to put their name on it or remain anonymous. Some people do feel like even if you say that it's non-punitive, you have a great safety culture, some people still might feel a little bit uneasy about putting their name behind something. So we don't ever want that to be a reason for them not to report something. So always have that option to remain anonymous as well. Just throwing up some examples. I'm going to throw up 3 examples of what a near-miss report form might look like. I would encourage you folks to Google near-miss forms or near-miss templates online. There's a lot of different ways and ideas to do these. Again, I will follow up by sending you out some examples of what this might look like for your business. But again, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Keep the forms very clear, very concise, to the point, and easy to report so that people don't feel like it's an onerous thing to do. Another actually great way to do this, if you folks have or your safety management system that is on an online platform, you might be able to integrate your reporting through that platform as well. There's also a lot of apps there specifically for reporting, things like near misses. I think I came across Notify IM. It was a free to use app, apparently done safe. There's some different types of apps that you can use out there. So definitely look into that as an alternative to encouraging near miss reporting and making it as easy as possible for your staff to use. So investigating near misses. When you're investigating near misses, make sure that we don't just look at what happened and take things at face value. We want to look at what could have happened. Had things been slightly different based on the type of work that we do and the details of the situation. Okay, we want to look at what could have happened, not just what happened. So it's very important for us to get all the details and establish the facts. Okay, establish the facts around the scenario. This is going to help us ultimately determine what some of the contributing factors were to the near miss, and hopefully get a very clear understanding of what the root cause or root causes potentially are for that near miss happening in the first place. And that is ultimately what we're after, is that root cause. That's going to expose some of those underlying issues within our health and safety programs. By doing a very good upfront investigation, getting the facts, determining the factors and causes, that's going to allow us to implement the right controls for the situation. And obviously, if we do this investigation right the first time, we are going to have a great opportunity here at preventing future injuries. It's when we see investigations done poorly, person slipped, well, watch where you're going or walk slower. Those aren't good corrective actions, and it usually results in somebody slipping again, somebody tripping again, somebody having that near miss again. We want to make sure that we do a good investigation and take the time up front because it's going to save us time on the back end. So what are contributing factors? Well, these are the situations, circumstances, or conditions that increase the likelihood of that event happening. Oftentimes, there could be multiple factors at play. So, by itself, a contributing factor may not have caused the incident, but when they occur at the same time, the probability of an incident occurring will increase. So, an example of that would be, let's go back to the worker slipping in the parking lot example. So, a worker slips in the parking lot. Some of the factors at play could be they were wearing their nice dress shoes. So they had, maybe it's a salesperson, they've got their nice dress shoes on in the middle of winter. And obviously, you look at a nice pair of dress shoes, they typically don't have a lot of grip or traction on them. We had an icy parking lot that day because it had just snowed. We had actually extreme wind that day as well, so that made obviously balance a bit more of an issue. So all of a sudden we've got these multiple factors in play, and all of them contribute in some way, shape, or form to this near miss situation happening. So a good way when we're looking at contributing factors and we're trying to identify all of them, create a bit of a timeline. So start with the incident. This is the near miss, and then kind of work backwards. So what happened leading up to the near miss? See if we can get that information, and I would encourage you to include that on your reporting forms as well. Not just what happened, but was there anything that was happening before then? So a good example of why we need to know that information is the worker slipped on the ice. Well, what happened leading up to that? Well, they were inside, and apparently a customer had been waiting for 15 minutes and was waiting for that person to come outside. And so the supervisor, notified them, hey, that person's been waiting for 15 minutes. So they quickly threw on their coat, and all of a sudden they were running or they were jogging or hurrying out to the customer. And then they ended up having that slip. So again, we want to know those factors because it's going to allow us now to identify other contributing factors that contributed to the near miss, right? Not just the near miss itself, that situation, the things leading up to the situation. So when we get that timeline, now we can take the factors of each event leading up to the incident, including the incident itself, and we can really flesh it out and make sure that we didn't miss anything that was important. Avoid hindsight bias. Now, hindsight bias, here's what it is. It's the tendency upon learning of an outcome of an event, such as a near miss, to overestimate one's ability to have foreseen the outcome. So obviously after somebody slips, you say, well, it's icy out, watch where you're going or walk slower, you should have known that. Well, everything's going to be in hindsight 2020, right? We're always going to have that perfect perception of the incident once it's already happened, and we also know that the outcome of doing that thing. So we want to avoid that hindsight bias. That's why it's important that we get all of the details using that timeline, identify all the contributing factors, and keep an open mind. Be open-minded and have an unbiased view of the situation. Again, everything is always going to look obvious to us in hindsight. So let's avoid doing that, and let's make sure that we take every single near miss that's reported serious, and we don't just assume or take it for face value. We actually flesh out the details of the scenario, and let's try and prevent it from happening again and learn some lessons from that situation. So we talked about contributing factors. Ultimately, we want to get to root cause. And what root cause is the underlying faulty process or system that led to the event or near miss. Okay, some of the common root cause examples would be inadequate training, There was no orientation process for the worker. The worker did not consider it a risk. That could be considered a root cause. Maybe we need to look into additional safety training or risk assessment at our business. Because we do know that risk perceptions and tolerance are different from person to person. So maybe that gives us some indicators of other things we need to look at. Ultimately, the way we're going to get to root cause is by examining all of the contributing factors to determine what the root cause is. So when we are looking at each contributing factor that we've identified, we want to use the 5 whys technique. Now, the 5 whys technique, it's just a kind of a, I guess, the law of averages. We're going to ask why something was allowed to happen or why that was the case, right? So when we look at the worker slipping, well, why did the worker slip? Well, because it's icy out. Well, why is it icy out? Because it snowed the day before. Okay, well, why did they slip? Well, they were wearing their sales shoes that don't have very good traction. Well, why were they wearing those? Well, they don't have any sort of work boots. So now we get into things by asking these why questions. Okay, well, maybe we need to look at having better maintenance schedule within our lot. We need to sand or get salt down on our lot more often. So we're going to look at maintenance activities. Okay, the worker was wearing their sales shoes. We don't have a policy in place for wearing boots when it's icy or wet outside. All right, well, maybe we need to look at installing or implementing a footwear policy where we will have the workers that are required to have a certain type of work boot. And then when they buy that work boot, maybe we reimburse them once they've been with us for a year. We give them some sort of boot allowance. So we start to look at other ways to control or prevent this situation from happening. And again, it's by looking at these contributing factors and asking why. Why did these things happen? Why were they allowed to happen? And as you do that, like I said, eventually we get to root cause, and we're going to be able to come up with better controls as a result of it. When we look at it, again, face value, I've seen so many investigations done this way where somebody slips, somebody hits their head on something, and the corrective action is, look, watch where you're going, walk slower. Those aren't good corrective actions. They may be things that need to be added or discussed, but they certainly aren't good fixes to this problem. The problem is likely rooted in something deeper. And again, root cause analysis is going to allow us to flesh those things out and develop better controls. So investigation steps. Here's kind of a simple investigation process you can follow in terms of rectifying or following up on these issues. So let's gather the preliminary information. So how was the incident reported and to who? So maybe it came through to our supervisor or a health committee or representative. We should have a process for selecting also kind of what events should be investigated, or to what degree. Obviously, the more serious in nature, the investigation is going to be more comprehensive. Second part, select an investigation team. And again, this should be in the policy and in your procedures. What does a near-miss investigation team look like? It could very well be the supervisor in conjunction with maybe a health committee member or two, or safety representative. That would be our investigation team. And we're going to delegate activities, or the supervisor would delegate activities in terms of who's responsible for what during that investigation. And we're going to come together and analyze it all as a group. Collect and organize all the facts, so make sure that we have all the information gathered, and if we're able to speak to other people in the area where this near miss happened, we might be able to collect some additional information as well. So make sure that we've collected and organized all the facts. And then identify those contributing factors and root cause. So identify any situations, circumstances, or conditions that would have increased the likelihood of the event. And then we're going to do that root cause analysis. So thoroughly analyze each contributing factor using that 5 why method to identify the underlying process and systemic issues of the event. because that's ultimately what we're after. Do we need to improve our training? Do we need to increase frequency of toolbox talks? Do we need to have, again, a policy around footwear? Whatever the case is, this is going to allow us to flesh out those details. Step 6, implement controls. So the team, you as a team, should determine the best changes or controls to implement that's going to reduce the likelihood of another similar event. And we're going to want to look at short-term and long-term actions. So in the short term, when we're talking about the slip in our yard, in the short term, we're going to get some salt down or sand the lot. In the long term, we might say, okay, we're going to develop a policy around footwear, and then we're going to roll that policy out. And that might take, a few days or a week or two or whatever the case is. So we want something that's going to be an adequate control in the short term, and then something maybe in the long term that's going to address the more systemic issue or the root cause. And then ultimately, we want to follow up to measure success, right? Any actions taken or controls implemented, we need to follow up to evaluate the success of them. Another follow-up action should also include making sure that the entire health committee was involved. If you have a health committee or are required to have one, that they review that investigation information and ensure that all things have been considered in that process and that the outcomes were ultimately successful. So easy step process there when you're doing investigations. Again, in terms of the length of investigation, I think when people hear that word, they think it's going to be some sort of long, drawn-out process. It doesn't have to be, right? Ultimately, what we want to do is get the details, put a team together, go look into it, have a look at any of those factors for contributing factors, determine root cause, implement controls, follow up on our things that we're putting into place. So again, it doesn't have to be that long, folks. And again, it's a lot longer if you actually have an injury to go through that process than it is to do a great investigation up front and eliminate this from happening in the future. So let's talk about improvements. What can we do to improve near miss reporting? And it really starts at the top, right? Leadership. We need to have the right people driving this program, and it starts with leadership. This is where all great safety cultures and programs start, is with great leadership. It's ultimately the owner's responsibility to implement health and safety initiatives and activities and have that safety program at their business. It starts with them. And they also need to hold people accountable, their management team, their supervisors, and the workers. The workers are obviously held to account typically by the supervisor. So if we see a break in this chain within the management team, so let's say the owner has, they're doing a great job, they want this program, they're encouraging it, managers filter that down to the supervisor, but the supervisor doesn't really care and they don't really talk about it much, and they don't have the right attitude about it. Well, once we see that fracture in that chain, it's going to lead to a fracture within the entire system, because the workers, if they see their supervisor doesn't care, chances that they care are going to be pretty slim, right? We always use the Pareto principle or 80-20 rule. Your workers are going to follow 20% of what you say and 80% of what you do. So in other words, your actions speak louder than your words do. So it's leading, right? It's showing that you care. It's showing that this is important. It's constantly engaging them with this information to make it, I shouldn't say make it appear, so that it does appear to them as a priority of yours. So active engagement from your management team and creating that reporting culture and encouraging people to do it. Communication, training, and education. So there's a lot of opportunities here. How often are you discussing near miss reporting? How often are you promoting those prevention activities within your business? Is it just it was touched on at orientation? Is it one of those things that, well, it's hanging up, they know that they're supposed to do it? Or are we having ongoing meetings and toolbox talks about it? Do we have information posted on the safety bulletin board? Perhaps you've created some posters within your business that discusses the reporting procedure and encourages people to report. Are you doing perception surveys at your business and surveying the employees on maybe why or why not the program is working really well? It's all about engagement and communication, training, education. These are all engagement tools that we need to utilize to show our employees that it's important to us, and encourage, again, that culture of positivity, that culture of safety, that culture of reporting. So it really, again, starts with the leadership, and we need to filter it through our information avenues, through our training, through our education, right? Inspections, proactively identifying hazards, right? This is not necessarily, I shouldn't say it's not a near miss thing, but when we're doing a good job inspecting, one thing that comes through on an inspection report, if we notice that workers aren't using the lockout tagout, that's actually a near miss. It's not only a concern and a hazard, it's a near miss, right? Because if they're not using the lockout tagout system, the potential repercussions of not using that system could be potentially a piece of equipment being started by another worker, right? And that could lead to other consequences, serious injury or possibly a fatality. So again, that's actually a near miss. So when we do a good job of having inspection programs and we inspect frequently, it's another proactive activity and another way to identify hazards, concerns, and near misses. So having a good inspection program, another great way to improve. Reporting, the whole KISS method, right? Keep it simple and straightforward. You've also heard keep it simple. Let's keep it positive. Keep it simple and straightforward. Like we said, the reporting process. This is our form. It's a one-page document. It's not 4 pages long, that gets the essential information that you want when somebody reports a near miss. And this is who you report it to. Again, let's keep those options open for anonymity. So we're going to have to consider that. Maybe again, when we do our reporting process through an app, if you're going to have it remain anonymous and I hand it to my supervisor, that's not very anonymous. However, we don't want it sitting in a box either waiting to be open, because if something happened today, we want to deal with it today. We don't want to wait a week, a month down the road and then review all our near misses and say, oh, wow, that happened 3 weeks ago. We want to deal with it now, so that we can start to provide for the health and safety of other workers as well, by dealing with that issue today. So keep that process simple and straightforward and ensure that people are allowed to remain anonymous. When investigating, again, the anonymity part, but also seek to find root cause. This is where most investigations get it wrong. They get the details, they go through the process of investigating because it's maybe not only a legal requirement, maybe it's an internal requirement for certain things. And we can tell it's usually when it's one of those situations where that person just wanted to get that paperwork off their desk because they're busy. This is where you get it wrong most of the time. Make sure that we do a good investigation so that we can actually do something about the situation, so that we can prevent it from happening again. If we don't do a good investigation, there's a strong chance that this will happen again, or it will eventually result in an injury or damage. So let's make sure that we are, again, promoting that reporting, putting a positive spin on reporting, encouraging it, and that we're doing a good, thorough investigation up front. Because, like we said before, it takes a lot more time if you have an injury to do all that paperwork than it does to do a good investigation up front and prevent it from happening in the first place. Swift resolutions. Like I said, once we've done an investigation, we want to resolve things promptly. We want to get it done today. We want to look into that thing today, right? If it's a health and safety issue, there shouldn't be anything more important than addressing a health and safety issue at your business. Your workers ultimately are the ones who are affected by health and safety issues and the ones being exposed to that danger. So we have a duty and responsibility to ensure that not only are they safe in health and that we're resolving the issue, but that, again, we are doing it in a prompt manner so that we don't expose other people to this issue as well. So let's make sure that we deal with these things promptly, as well as let's make sure our health committees, our safety representatives are a part of this process, that they are ones who are also a part of the investigation process and reviewing these things afterwards so that we can ensure that we have the best outcomes and controls in place. Incentives, provide incentives. Focus on incentives that reward participation. However, I will caution you when you're creating an incentive program, make sure you put a lot of thought behind it. We want to stay away from a couple of things. Things that would discourage people from reporting, like we've had X amount of days without a lost time incident. We don't want to discourage people from reporting for the sake of some sort of reward. We definitely don't want that. We also don't want over-reporting or people creating fictional events so that they can get some sort of reward from the program. This, I would recommend, be more outcome-based. So when somebody brings something forward and possibly it resulted in a good, maybe a really good control or a good safety initiative, something that increases safety at our business, that's where we want to focus the incentive program. That's where we want to reward when the outcomes affect are positive in terms of the fact that we had a good control put in place. We maybe developed some other initiative to our safety program. That's what we're after, outcome-based or behavior-based things. So it should result in something positive. It shouldn't just be because somebody is reporting, a million different things. We want this to be outcome-based. So have a look at that when you're thinking about incentives. And ultimately, measurement. You can't manage what you don't measure. If we're not measuring this stuff, guys, we are going to, again, miss out on opportunities. We talked about lagging and leading indicators, using those two things hand in hand so that we can drive safety at our business, that we can determine trends, track progress, set goals. When we use those measurements together, we are going to have a much more effective safety program. And again, it's going to allow us to measure it and manage it more effectively. So look at having safety measurement as part of your safety programs. How many time loss scenarios did we have? How many near misses were reported? And then use those leading indicators to determine how we're going to kind of set a path forward, set some goals, track your progress, and improve safety at your businesses. So that brings us to believe the conclusion of our webinar today. So we talked a little bit about what near misses are, what are some of the causes of near misses, how we should go about reporting near misses, some of the benefits of doing that, as well as ways to do it. We talked about investigating, right? How we can go about conducting effective investigations, looking at contributing factors and identifying root causes, and ultimately some solutions or some ideas on how we might be able to improve near miss reporting at our businesses. Again, guys, don't discount how important near miss reporting is. It's a prevention tool. It's a proactive activity. I think we give a lot more clout to inspections than maybe we do to near misses. Again, both should be encouraged. Both should be tools that we use in our safety programs to influence safe behavior. If you need a webinar certificate or you're interested in getting a certificate today to show your attendance, go to our website, www.motorsafety.ca. Up in the right-hand corner, you'll see a register button to sign up for a training account by completing the prompts. And if you've already got an account, you don't need to register. You can simply log in. Then you'll go to the webinar courses tab to the webinar that you attended today. You'll scroll down, click on the quiz link, and view the lesson quiz. And then upon successful completion, the certificate will immediately be mailed out to you. So that's it. That wraps up our webinar near miss reporting. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with me today, folks. If you have any questions or would like further assistance, please contact us at 306-721-0688 or contact info@motorsafety.ca, and we will be able to direct you to one of our advisors. I will send out some follow-up information today for you folks, some templates and things like that you can use. I'd also encourage you to go to our website, www.motorsafety.ca. We recently made some changes and updated our website, so go check it out. We've perused the website. It's got a nice, fresh new look, and definitely encourage you to go on there and check it out. We're approaching our 25th anniversary as well this March, so I like the fact that that was done. We're going to be putting a museum as well, kind of a little history of MSA on that website. So please go to it, www.motorsafety.ca. Thanks again so much, folks, for being here today. We'll see you down the road. Take care for now. Have a safe day.